My friends, I want to thank you for watching this video. If you like what you see, please click the subscribe button and click the notification bell. And if you think you're already subscribed, please check to make sure YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you without your permission. It happens every day. And if you really like what you see, please consider becoming a channel member or even leaving a super thanks donation to help keep us going. I promise to answer each and every one I receive. Thank you for watching, my friends, and now, on to the video. My friends, I have seen episode 3 of The Acolyte, and it is the worst TV episode of Disney Star Wars ever made. At least so far. I say so far because I have a feeling from clues in this episode that even worse is coming in The Acolyte. More on that in a moment, but let's be clear. This is not my formal review, people. I'll be reviewing this perversion of Star Wars tonight on Pop Culture Breakdown at 7 Central, 5 Pacific, and my detailed review will come later, so let's just say this is my reaction to the disgusting debacle I just witnessed, and I am furious, because what I'm seeing on The Acolyte is the final degradation of Star Wars. I'm furious because as The Last Jedi was to movies, episode 3 of The Acolyte is to television, utterly destroying the lore that came before, trashing established canon with the drooling glee of an idiot child knocking over china cabinets with abandon. And stay tuned to the end of this review, because I believe I've unraveled the big central mystery of the whole damn show, and I'm going to reveal it at the end of this video, and believe me, it's the worst thing you can imagine, the worst possible slur to the Jedi that soils everything that came before, which is exactly what KK wants. So what is Episode 3 in a nutshell? Episode 3 is Kennedy sodomizing Star Wars right in its Sarlacc pit with a rainbow-colored strap-on provided to her by Leslie Headland. I don't know, but I can imagine that Leslie might have gotten instruction on the kind of sodomy I saw in this last episode at the knee of her former mentor, Harvey Weinstein. That could explain some of what I saw here, a kind of violation, a kind of stripping away of dignity, and eroding of self-respect. That's pretty much what Leslie has done to Star Wars here. And KK? What has KK done? Since Disney bought Lucasfilm, KK has been involved in one huge sex change operation on a franchise level. Watching the lesbian witch space coven of The Acolyte, completely free of men, I realized that the Star Wars franchise is now trans. Star Wars used to be a male franchise, but now KK has cut its balls off and fashioned its lightsaber into a fleshlight, and now Star Wars is a trans female franchise. Where once we had Jedi, we have witches. Where once we had the Force, we now have the Thread. Where once we had men, we have women. Lots and lots of women. The Acolyte is drowning in estrogen, and after I saw this episode, I realized I had been exposed to so much estrogen through the TV set, I had grown boobs. And not perky 20-something boobs either. We're talking 50-year-old stripper flappers, stretched out from centrifugal force from too many nights spinning on too many poles for too many dollars for the patriarchy. I had to watch Conan the Barbarian, Rambo, John Wick, and Raiders of the Lost Ark to get rid of my Disney Star Wars boobs through an injection of solid cinematic testosterone. But the memory of this ugly, hateful episode remains, with the conviction that far worse, as I said, is yet to come. Make no mistake, Star Wars died a long time ago, but in this fucking shit stain of an episode, KK pounds that strap-on into the Star Wars corpse so hard, its head pops right off. And as I said, I'm pretty sure I know how it's about to get worse. KK is famously rumored to have said, "I will have my way with Star Wars or burn this foolishness to the ground." Well, this episode of The Acolyte is that fire. Let's sift through the ashes and piss on them together. What's the plot? It's a flashback to when the twins we saw in the first episode were kids, growing up in an enclave of lesbian space witches. Yes, that's right, my friends. This is Leslie Headland's and Kathleen Kennedy's paradise, women only, no men allowed, which is basically an accurate description of the Star Wars fan base at this point. There are no men around at all. So how did two women have these babies? Well, here's one of the fundamental violations of Star Wars canon right off the bat. Apparently, these two lesbian space witches created these twins with the Force, which is how Anakin was created. So that strips away another pillar of real Star Wars lore, that Anakin was a unique virgin in the Force, the chosen one. Now all of that's out the window. The space lesbian witches did it firstest and did it twice as bestest as Anakin. These girls were created with the Force first, or as they call it, the thread, which means that Anakin now is nothing special. See, that's what KK loves doing. She and her cronies can't create a fucking thing that's original and of her own. All she can do is modify and vandalize the works of others. Just look at these so-called twins. Osha and May in the first two episodes were exact twins, played by the same actress. So why don't these little girls look the same? I mean, this is a small point. I know, it's little shit. But if Harvey Weinstein's former assistant Leslie Headland can't even get the little shit right, how could she be expected to get the big things right? She can't, and she doesn't. The Acolyte is all wrong, and it has destroyed what little is left of Star Wars after years of KK's incompetence and abuse. In a nutshell, the witches are going to hold an ascension ceremony to admit the two twin girls into the coven. May wants to be a witch. Osha isn't so sure. The lesbian space witches are on high alert because the Jedi are nosing around the woods looking to test their little girls and, if they're strong in the Force, take them away for training. That's right, my friends, in the Acolyte, the Jedi are the villains. I repeat, the Jedi are the villains, and I predict moving forward that they only get more villainous. I'll explain why in a minute, but let's cut to the fucking chase, shall we? Under Headland and Kennedy, Star Wars Now is about a colony of space lesbian witches who are oppressed by the Jedi, who serve as a kind of interstellar child protective services. Does your kid have the Force? The Jedi will train them free of charge. That's right, friends, free of charge. And if you don't want your kid trained to be a Jedi, too bad is the implication we're given. The Jedi show up looking for kids because they're concerned the witches are teaching them. In other words, homeschooling them. Oh, and that won't do. The implication is, if the kids have the Force, the Jedi are gonna take them away by hook or by crook. Star Wars is now the story about the patriarchy oppressing lesbian witches and forcing kids into their educational system, literally. I'm not joking or exaggerating. This so-called nuance Kathleen Kennedy and Leslie Headland are so fond of talking about is really nothing more than a complete and total vilification of the Jedi Order, a retcon of what the Force is and how it works, and a fundamental and final shift away from the male audience and toward an audience of females and those who assert themselves to be female. So the Jedi show up, the witches are scared of them basically, and the Jedi want to test the girls. Their mother inferior tells them to fail the test, so the Jedi will leave, but Osha doesn't want to lie. She wants to be a Jedi. May purposely fails the test, Osha passes it, and May is so angry, she says, "I'll stop you, I'll kill you," and May locks Osha in her room and starts a fire. Osha escapes the room, is falling into a chasm off of a bridge when Master Soul catches her and pulls her up. He tells her that May set a fire, burned down the whole fortress, despite it being carved out of a mountain and made entirely of stone. And yes, May in the process killed everyone. Well, this raises a lot of questions, folks. And here is my indication that as bad as this shit is, far worse is yet to come. As Saul and Osha run in a panic through the fortress, we can see there's not a lot of fire. Not even a lot of smoke, even though smoke is very cinematic. At one point they run past a pile of bodies and guess what? They're not burned. How very odd. I mean, look at this overhead shot. This isn't a coven-killing conflagration with ample walking space between small patches of flame. This is the backdraft attraction at Universal Theme Park, perfectly safe for tourists and toddlers alike. The last shot of the show is May standing in the woods outside the fortress, all alone, looking puzzled and saying, "Osha?" Now what does this mean, do you think? It either means Leslie Headland is so supremely incompetent, she doesn't realize that stone doesn't burn, and burn victims need to look burned, or it means that the fire was just a cover-up and the Jedi slaughtered the whole space lesbian coven and blamed it on May. Hell, they may even have killed off all the witches, then panicked and said, "Shit, we need a cover-up to hide our murder," and used Jedi mind control to get May to set the fire. People are already outraged that the Jedi in this episode are acting like CPS and taking children away from their parents, especially if they don't approve of how they're being homeschooled. But wait till you get a load of Jedi murdering the entire coven and then covering it up. Otherwise, why are all the Jedi looking so guilty? Why does that one Jedi drink poison and apologize to May if it was May who started the fire? Do you see the outrage here? Do you see what they do to the Jedi in this episode is nothing compared to what they're going to do to the Jedi in the next few episodes? It may simply be Leslie Headland's incompetence in staging an absurd sequence, or it may be that the sequence looks like bullshit because it is bullshit, as Jedi cover up their massacre. Notice how Saul, as he runs with Osha, is in a panic, hurrying Osha through the ruins, not wanting her to look too closely at the bodies. He's not hurrying her because there's some kind of danger that the mountain is going to collapse from a little fire. Oh, Saul is just trying to hurry her through a crime scene so she doesn't absorb what really happened. We will be discussing this franchise-killing episode of The Acolyte, along with the gay kiss episode of Doctor Who, tonight on Pop Culture Breakdown at 7 Central, my friends, and a more extensive review is coming, but let me sum up my feelings about this episode right here. Disney has murdered Star Wars. It's over. Disney paid $4 billion for something just to trash it. They stopped making Star Wars movies because the sequel trilogy and Solo were so fucking god-awful. They lost a vast sum of money on a failed Star Wars hotel that went out of business in 18 months. 18 months after opening. They made a Star Wars theme park without any real Star Wars in it, and nobody goes to it. You wonder how Disney could kill off a $4 billion investment? Look no further, gang. Behold, lesbian space witches fighting child-abducting Jedi who will probably later be revealed to be mass murderers as well. This is Star Wars now, and nobody gives a fuck about it anymore. Good Christ, how could Disney have released this? How did they approve it? They burnt Star Wars down to the fucking ground, and we will not forget, and we will not forgive. I hope Iger is enjoying the spectacle of universal hatred of this garbage, terrible reviews, even in Forbes, at last. Disney has no way to spin this. This is the death of Star Wars, and it happened under Iger and it happened under Kathleen Kennedy. This is the desecration of a once grand and noble franchise by women jealous of the better and more successful men that came before them. Join us tonight on Pop Culture Breakdown at 7 Central, 5 Pacific, as we dissect this filthy atrocity. From the center of the earth, this is Dictor Van Doomcock bidding you all, my friends, stay angry.